So here's my neighborhood. I grew up in this neighborhood. This is Kimball Avenue. Kimball between here in Montrose. Kimball, Montrose is north. Irving I'm heading towards. But I didn't go a lot on this side of the street. Some people did from Patrick Henry, went to that, but a little further down, they went to another elementary school. So Kimball Avenue is like the barrier. I only walked up that side when I was going to Horner Park or McFedrick's up on California. But that side of the street, I didn't really go much. So I stayed on the other side of Kimball Avenue, which is on the west side of Kimball. And then there was a Jack in the Box right here on the corner. And my brother, this is where I got into tacos. Jack in the Box had tacos back then, and they had deep fried tacos, and they used to be right on this corner. Now it's a pizza place and something else, but this has always been a liquor store and that. But that was the Jack in the Box. And I used to come up here. My brother Richard loved tacos, and it had the American cheese. How many tacos have American cheese? They use like Kraft American cheese slices in the taco. American cheese. And they put it in the taco, then they deep fried the taco. And I would love Jack in the Box's taco. It was awesome. My brother Richard loved their tacos, and I got into it because my brother Richard, God rest his soul, and can't mention him too much or I start crying. But this neighborhood, I love this neighborhood, and there's a little bank, but we didn't open up an account here. So this is U.S. Bank, but this was a little community bank right here. It's been here, the same green color since I've been a child. Now it's U.S. Bank. But the funny thing is, they didn't go into Patrick Henry High School and talk about opening up children's savings accounts, 5 children's savings accounts, 529 plans for children. They didn't go into Patrick Henry and teach financial literacy or anything. And then McDonald's. I grew up on this here. My brother worked at this McDonald's, and they used to have extra food every night until they cut down, but they should have still offered the employees anything to go for a discount, truly. And if you were impoverished under a certain thing, you can get free meals to go. Free meals to go home. Free meals to go home. Oh. So this was a laundromat. Now it's something else. And this is where I used to go swimming, and this is where I almost drowned. The pool was crowded. The lifeguard, one lifeguard, she wasn't sitting up enough. She couldn't see the heads because she's got to rotate her head. There should have been more than one lifeguard. So I went under, and I saved myself. She came after I saved myself. I would have been drowned, and I would have probably been dead. But anyways, here, this park used to have sprinklers right there. Those are the sprinkler systems. Oh my God, they're still there. But I would come up during the summertime, come up here. They had a sandbox up here too. They took out the sandbox and put in a parking lot. But these sprinklers right here, see these little pillboxes? These have little sprinkler heads, and you can run in this and play in the water in the summertime. And it was great. We could come out here on hot days, run around. There was a sandbox, and then there were swings. Swings. No more swings. No more sandbox. And the swings, we used to swing. They had the baby swing and the regular swings. But now, yes, we did swing so hard that we would get so high that we would flip over. Flip over. Think about that. The chain was long, and then we swing hard, and if you could get up enough, the centrifugal force would carry you backwards, and you would flip over. Truly, not fall down, flip over, and the chain would snap, and then you would swing forward again. But We practiced going high and then flipping over the bar and then coming back on the backside. But you had to watch it. It hurt your hands, kind of, because when you go all the way up, the chain goes loose, and then you're on the backside, and then you're holding the chain, and that's why they have to have rubberized chains. Truly, rubberized chains that hold in. Anyways, but when the chain came down, it would snap, and it kind of hurt your hands. So I don't think I might have only did it once because some older kids were doing it, but truly, it kind of hurt holding the chain because, you're falling, and I'm 100-something pound kid, say, or whatever, and that weight, boom, and it would snap, but then you would swing, and it was kind of cool. So I did that, and then here, my brother, in his infinite stupidity, I'm sorry to rip on him, but he played flag football here. I played for him at Gompers Park, flag football. He didn't get my brother John into the flag football league. My brother, never. I come up and watch him and Greg play, and that I would have loved to play. I played football in college. I played in high school. I was a standout. And when I played at Gompers, I used to tear him up on his team. So I started on his flag football team at Gompers, and I would crush him. But besides this, I played defensive line in that, and I set all the lifting records and all that. And when I gave you a forearm shiver, I could lift you off the ground with a forearm shiver. And one guy, older white guy, he came and I gave him a forearm shiver, which was perfectly legal. I didn't do it to him again, but I lifted him up and it kind of hurt him in a way. I didn't mean to do it. He got beat. I'm like, I didn't violate any rules. But, okay, I'll just use the sweeps and other things because he was an older guy. And so I didn't do it again. So I used the sweeps. There's the ones where you go over with your arm and you push them through. Truly, you swim your arm over, a swim technique. And as you swim it over, your outside arm, you're pushing them through. Truly. So one arm's swimming over and the other arm is pushing them. You don't want them to stop. And so they're coming at you and you do the swim technique, but one arm over and the other arm pushing them. And so I used the swim technique and some other techniques. So I could just get right into the quarterback all the time or the running back. I caught tons of the quarterback in the backfield and the running backs in the backfield pulling their flag. So, and they really... Anyways, but my brother didn't include me here. And then he didn't include me and John in any of the softball teams. But when he needed me, I went up to Bullhead City. I came up from Tucson, and then I went with him, and I went to Bullhead City, and I sat on the bench for the 16-inch softball championship, and I never played. But I supported him. He said he needed another person, and I sat on the bench the whole time. But the whole point is, he needed me. I traveled up from Tucson, met him at the airport, then went all the way to Bullhead City, which is next to Laughlin, Nevada. He asked, I came running. So, here's Independence Park. They have an indoor pool. And here, lots of flag football. Unbelievable. And people used to tuck in their flags to make it shorter. Now, I don't agree with it, but the ref said it was legal, so you could tuck it in one time. You wrapped it around the little waist rope you had. You wrapped it one time. It made it shorter, so it was not hanging down as low. And then when you grabbed it, because it was wrapped around, it didn't come off as easy. So it made it harder. But it was legal. So he used to do those little things to make it a little bit harder to pull the flag. But this was, you talk about highly competitive. These are all weekend warriors, former football players, all those football players. And the league was highly competitive. And then my brother played all the softball teams with Greg too. So Greg and him They played, and the funny thing is, they're not promoters for this. My brother isn't a promoter for flag football. He isn't a promoter for rugby. He isn't a promoter for softball. And he got involved in softball because our Dick Rivera ran the field house, and we used to play 12-inch softball. See, there's the hard clincher, and then there's the soft clincher. It's a little bit harder when you first buy it. You hit it a couple times, and it's a soft. So we played no mitt league 12-inch. See, you see the 12-inch, the fast pitch. Well, there's a 12-inch that's soft. And we, as small kids, played 12-inch softball. And Dick Rivera started the league between all the people that ran the park districts. All the people. He just called up. Everybody knew him and loved him. And then he started the wrestling program at the park district. Wrestling program. Dick bought the mats. And then he was going to start a basketball program, but he didn't get around to it. And we had a hockey ring. So that's where I ice skated. He made a ring on this field right here. You can make a hockey ring in the wintertime. In the wintertime, this can turn into a hockey ring. And so Dick at Patrick Henry would make it into a hockey ring. And that's where I skated leisurely. And then we had hockey leagues, hockey teams, just pick up. But you have the tennis courts here. You can have tennis leagues. But you have to coordinate it, and it keeps the community healthy. And they don't flyer and talk. You can have walking groups here. Walking groups. Truly, do laps around the park. Walking groups. Truly, here's the sidewalk, and it goes all the way around. Then there's a little trail through. You can have walking groups. And so you can play little flag football with kids. Have a youth league of flag football. I've never seen a small kid like T-ball. They can have T-ball here. You don't need, they don't hit the ball that far. You don't even need a backstop with T-ball. Truly, you don't need a backstop. So you can play T-ball. You can play wiffle ball. If they don't want the ball to go that far, how about a professional wiffle ball league? Me and Pete Sangren, we played wiffle ball. And we played it all the time, pitching to each other, hitting, and it was awesome. At his house, we played it. His father's a pharmacist, and his mother's super nice to me. Pete's parents, that was in Deerfield, super nice to me. And he ran the pharmacy, Litterman's Pharmacy. Just salt of the earth, great people. His parents, awesome people. And Jeff Friedman's parents, awesome people. I don't know why Jeff became such a jerk. His sister wasn't, but he was a jerk. But anyways, so you have this, but there's so much that can be done for the community. Park closes at 11 p.m. You can have pinochle. My brother played in indoor basketball league, not here, but at Gompers Park, not too far. And then Sam, his former, that I really went there before Sam, I became friends with another kid who started his own salon, hair salon. He's an Arab kid, and he used to play basketball at Gompers Park, and we talked about the league. It was competitive, weekend basketball and that. He worked long hours in that. He was an awesome kid, but he would also get in his exercise, so he didn't come into the salon to a certain time. And he would play in a basketball league. And then he left the Blades on Lawrence, and he opened up his own place. But me and him became great friends and talked about Gompers Park and the basketball league. That's where I first saw my brother dunk a basketball. My brother Carl could dunk a basketball. The only reason he had problems is he couldn't palm the basketball. But he could dunk a basketball. So, and then this is where I went to John's funeral, and I think this was the funeral home where my father was as well. I think this was the funeral home where my father's was as well. I was only 7 years old, but almost positive. I haven't talked to my sister, but funeral homes, like I told you, keep remembrances of all their clients, and they keep pictures and memorabilia and so on, and they can have these remembrance ceremonies and people come in and they all together in the funeral home. Now, this is afterwards, after they die, and they have a remembrance of the day of their death. And funeral homes can have these ceremonies remembering the day of their death. Now, it's unlike the cemeteries, but you can go visit the grave and so on and so forth and do other things at the cemetery. But the funeral homes can have these ceremonies honoring you. You come back to the funeral home and you meet the people that were at the funeral. That's why they're supposed to take all the names in that. And then they have this remembrance ceremony. And so every 10 years, or you have a 5-year or a 10-year reunion. 5 or 10-year reunion. Make it every 10 years. So every 10 years they come back and they get to reunite with their friends. Like they do high school reunions every 10 years. So do it a day of death reunion every 10 years. It's not too much of a burden. Excuse me. Once every 10 years. So you can do that. And that brings in all kinds of business. The funeral home never has to have funerals again. Because literally, all those funerals will have all those 10-year reunions if they go back. Excuse me. And contact the people. They can have these day of, remembering the remembrance, and you come back to the funeral home and you get to meet the people and see and talk to them. I like to have the day of remembrance for my father's funeral. Truly. And I forget where my brother was, but again, I would love to go to those remembrance and see the people and talk to them and hash of how things were on those when, what they were doing at that time in their life. And going back and talking about a little bit about nostalgia and history and, how things were through, from then to where you are now. But every 10 years, they'll have new stories. So, new stories every 10 years. So again, you can have all these good things. And it kind of looks like a German lodge right there. A Swiss or Scandinavian ski chalet. So German, Scandinavian, it kind of has that design. There used to be all these German restaurants and so on. I miss that. I miss German food, but I don't know where to get it. So, again, Superior Health Linen. So, again, their business doesn't, like I showed you how to improve the healthcare and do the small things so people are in and out of the hospital. They're there for a day. Pregnant women are in. They have to take their babies in. They might have to do overnight observations and so on. And so they get their work, their business from keeping you healthy. And so, and this is always a little corner store. But I never played baseball here because they didn't have a baseball field. I could have played kickball here. Kickballs are great. We played it at Patrick Henry, kickball. And they don't have volleyball. The tennis courts can be volleyball courts as well. Tennis courts can be volleyball courts. Tennis courts can be volleyball courts. They're almost the exact same size as a volleyball court. And I love volleyball. So it can be, tennis courts can be badminton courts. Badminton, the net's high. Tennis, it's low. But tennis courts can also be badminton courts. This whole pickleball stuff, I'm not the big fan of pickleball. I like badminton. I like volleyball. Truly. And then you have tennis. And so you can use the courts for all three of those sports. Truly. And then there's other things you can do. And again, this McDonald's, I told you when I was locked out of my house once, we sat here and the manager, because we were sitting there, the two of us, we were perfect. Silent, we're sitting, just talking to us. And we were staying there because we had nowhere to go. And I don't know if it was cold out or not. I think it was warm out and it was air conditioning. And he's like, why aren't you guys buying anything? And I'm like, well, don't have any money. And we're just little kids. We're not adults, we're little kids. And I'm locked out of my house, and my friend's keeping me company. I forgot who my friend, just keeping me company. And we're locked out of our house. And you don't have any money? No. And he's like, okay, go up to the front and order whatever you want. And I'll take care of it. You and your friend go up to the front and order whatever you want, and it's on the house. And he's like, go eat, get some food, and then sit there as long as you want. That's what he said. Sit there as long as you want, and, when go and check out your house and so on. And I'm like, okay. So we ate and sat there for a while longer, and then I walked home, and my mom was home, and I opened up, went in. And now this is the house this is an Asian restaurant, and this used to be a breakfast place. And now there's a car wash. Those didn't really exist as a little kid. And then there's a Walgreens. Again, these are just independent stores. We didn't really have these. And then I told you about how the check cashing places can do all kinds of things, that from bill pay, truly, they can just come up and pay your bills. You can have a Chase account, and they'll set up your bill pay and everything else, and it's a little local, and they have money orders and cashier's checks, and they can sell stamps, and they can sell envelopes, stamps and envelopes. They can sell different boxes for packaging. They can be a UPS store or a FedEx. They can take FedEx, UPS packages. Truly. Now you have to be worried about bombs, right? And so you have to know your clients. But they can take all kinds of packages. They can sell envelopes and stamps and many other things. They don't need poor people anymore. They need to get out of the poor person game. And so I think this Burger King has been here since I've been a child. But they redid it. And then this is the KFC. And that wasn't there. But there was an ice cream place I used to go to and on Montrose in California. And there's the dry cleaners. It's been there since a kid. And right next to it was Tasty Freeze. And they had chocolate dip cones and everything. But we were here. I was umpiring. I was an umpire. My sister didn't know I was an umpire. I umpired the youth leagues. And I had that. My sister took me out of that. Not only did I work at her company, Walsh Brothers, as a child, and work at Patrick Henry, truly, during the summer, but also I was an umpire. I actually had 3 jobs during the summer. So I was an umpire for the different youth leagues, the midget majors and midget minor leagues and that. And when I was a midget major, I was an umpire for midget minors. And then here's the Chicago River. This is where I got to talk to the tunnel guys about the deep tunnel. And this hole, it goes way down. And I got to talk to the construction guys about what they were doing. And, this was a storm flooding and water management system. And they were doing the deep tunnel project when I was a little kid. And the construction guys were nice. And here is Paul Revere Park. And right here is the boys club. Now, I didn't go as much, but I played ping pong here all the time. And there's the field house. These two should be together. They don't. The park district doesn't work with the boys and girls club. Why? I don't know. Now, every year they have a carnival. And let me go around. They have a carnival. They raise funds for the boys and girls club. And there used to be a huge carnival behind here. And this is where I played youth football. And it was free. Helmets, pad. And my coach was a heavier set white guy. And he had a beard and everything. Super good guy. And he coached youth football here. And so I played in the youth football league. But just 1 year. Truly coming up, and it was a little bit more difficult. So I don't think I played multiple years. But I should have. But tennis courts again and everything. And so you have all these parks around here. Friends of the Park. Chicago Friends of the Park. It's just not the lakefront. It's every park in Chicago. And Friends of the Park should be actively working to improve the parks. But they used to have a big carnival. This tennis court wasn't here. And this used to be football fields. And, the flying around swings. One of the chains broke and the person went flying into the concession stand. I was on them. They were great, but they had one incident with the chain breaking. But they don't check the weight, and they could put tensioneers on them and check the ability to hold tension. But there was one incident as a child, and the chain broke, and they went flying into, I guess, the concession stand. And I don't know if they lived or not, but it was a big incident. But it used to have this great carnival here, and I came to support the Boys and Girls Club. Yeah, I had fun, but I spent money here that I earned because I love the Boys and Girls Club. But the Boys and Girls Club, I don't understand. They can operate out of the Chicago field houses. And so can the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. They can operate out of the Chicago field houses. Boys and Girl Scouts, Brownies, and Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and Indian Princess that Emily was. So they can use the park district. And the park district generates revenue from them. So they should be in league, but they weren't. I don't know what this place is, but it's the Good Shepherd. And so, again, it's nice to live in this area, and you got the ice skating ring, and you got Lane Tech and Gordon Tech, now DePaul Prep. So you got good high schools. I don't know the elementary school in this area. So, but the whole point, these are great areas to live in. Truly great areas to live in. And so there used to be, I think this was AT&T facility. There used to be the Baby Bells here. And, this is Western. No, that wasn't it. But anyways, these are great neighborhoods. And they all have their value proposition. But Friends of the Park should be working with all the parks. They can do movie night in the park here. And like I said, Boys and Girl Scouts and other things can use the field house and the grounds. They can have all kinds of youth football and youth programs. And they need to work with the park district. Like Horner Park had all the youth baseball. We used to use the field house for some things and use the park district. But it wasn't run by the park district, I don't think. But I played kids from all over the city of Chicago. I played on an all-star team. I played in the league in Horner Park. But also, I played on an all-star team all the years I was. And so I was around the city, and then I did wrestling. And I met kids from all over the city through wrestling. And then I played bumper pool, and we had between the field house and kids traveled. And I met kids from all over the city. Then I played ping pong, and I met kids from all over the city. And so all those activities, I met kids because these were between park districts and that. And I met kids, a youth softball league. Not only did I play baseball, but I played 12-inch softball. And we had met kids from the other leagues and from the other schools. So, I mean, I don't understand it. You have Lane Tech right here. Lane Tech can use, kids from Lane Tech can be involved in the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. They can be involved in these, the females can be involved in the Girl Scouts and that. They can be troop masters in that. Truly, troop masters in that. And so the kids can mentor younger kids in elementary school and so on. They can have the Brownies and Indian Princesses and these kids at Lane Tech and DePaul Prep. And, they can mentor and grow it up. That's how it used to be. Truly. It used to be that way. keep calm and dine out. Yeah. So this is a great school. My friend Victor went here. My partner David Kudo went to Lane Tech. He used to take like 5 buses to go here. And his father wanted him to be a draftsman. And here is WGN Studios. So right here, that McDonald's has always been there. And this is where Goldie Hawn shot the movie. And they can share the field right here between what? Gordon Tech, which is now DePaul Prep, and Lane Tech. They can share that football field. Both of them can share that field. So that stadium for track and field and that, they can renovate it, and they should go in together and renovate this. And then in the back is a baseball field that Lane Tech plays, but DePaul doesn't. They play at Gordon Tech, played football, practice football at Horner Park, and Gordon Tech played baseball at Horner Park. Roosevelt's home field was at Horner Park. Gordon Tech's home field was at Horner Park, and Lane Tech's home field can be at Horner Park. But Horner Park was the home of the baseball fields. And so you had all the high schools play baseball there. So they can have their soccer fields in the stadium here. Soccer, track and field, football, other outdoor sports, right? So, again, and then this is where the Chicago Cubs do remote parking and everything. So these are great schools, and these feed top students into the community. All these kids are trying to aspire. And so here's an elementary school I never knew. I mean, that's new to me. But back here, they have their baseball field. So this is Lane Tech's home field. So that's fine. DePaul is at Horner Park. Roosevelt High School is at Horner Park. And, and then I don't know where Roosevelt practices their football, but they can practice at Horner Park as well. Yeah, truly. Now you have a school bus take them over, truly, and then it waits for them to after practice. But the school bus can leave and come back after practice. So this is Kerry Woods Field. This is sweet. So, okay. And I don't know. Maybe DePaul wants to share the field with Lane Tech. They get more utilization out of the field. I've actually never been back here, except to play when I played Lane Tech baseball back here once. But anyways, freshman year, I was a superstar in baseball. I hit more home runs and batting average and traveling team I played on, and everything went garbage. Anyways, not going on about that. But I was the number 1 baseball player freshman year. But anyways, they have this back here. I don't know what any of this is. A small woods. So I've never been back here. So I have no idea. And WGN should be heavily investing in the community. Truly, WGN should be heavily investing in the community, and they should be doing stuff with DePaul and Lane Tech and the elementary school. So I know Paul brings on the little kids for, weather and so on, but they can really dive into this local community that's around them, and it would be incredible. So Morgan and that, she can even teach. Truly, the weather staff can rotate and teach weather at Lane Tech or the elementary school and the high school. And you have a tag team teaching. So it's not too much burden. They have one class on weather, meteorology, and they teach, and it's the whole weather crew. It's Paul and Tim and Mike and Morgan and all that, and they teach one class. And each of them take a segment of the class. So maybe, it's 6 months long, the class. So each of them teach for a month. I think there's 5 or 6 of them with the girl. So each of them teach for 1 month. Truly, it's 5 days a week, and they teach for 1 month. And so their obligation's over. Then the next semester they teach for 1 month. So they can tag team the class, and it transitions between them all, so it's not too much burden. But they get to know the kids, and they can build up, a little bit of extra secondary income, and then they get teacher's pension. They can put into the teacher's pension and so on. And here's the malls that we hang out, and they have the food stores and so on. But WGN can really get invested. They can teach a class on sports. Like Pat and those guys can teach a class on sports, and then the news anchors can teach a class on news and politics. News and politics, like Dan Ponce and that can teach a class on news and politics. And it's a side job. It gets to know the kids, and you're doing it where it doesn't need to be over demanding. Or they can do adult classes, like take a class on politics or take a class on meteorology. Truly. And they can offer a basic class on meteorology, a basic class on, news or whatever. Lauren can teach over here. She went to Harvard and news and politics and whatever. And so they can get really tied into the local community and mentor, and that community will grow, and they'll move, get families and so on, and it will build the WGN network. So that's called a grassroots movement. A grassroots movement. And so you start the grassroots movement. And so they revitalize this somewhat, but it can be revitalized more. So this is all where I grew up. I've never been in this bowling alley. So this was like where I planned on staying. I never planned on moving out to, I was already planning to go to Gordon Tech or Lane Tech. Roosevelt was my fallback. There's an entrance exam for Lane Tech, and I was prepping, getting ready for the entrance exam, because you take it at the beginning of 8th grade, I think, to go into the magnet school. And then my fallback was to go to Gordon Tech, because I could have got an athletic scholarship at Gordon Tech. Truly, they have high school, it's a Christian school, and I could have gotten in, so I was going to go to Gordon Tech or Lane Tech. Worst case scenario, I went to Roosevelt, and I would have played all the sports at Roosevelt. I have nothing against Roosevelt, but I grew up watching Gordon Tech, and Gordon Tech was like the best 6A football team in the state of Illinois. They won championship after championship after championship, and I used to watch them out there, their coaches, and watch them practice and hit the sled, and this was all at Horner Park, and they might have practiced a little bit at Mefedricks, but I grew up watching them, and I was a big Gordon Tech fan. And my friend Mike Weiser and Tom Selke and Rob Tobler, all of them went to Gordon Tech. Now what do they do for alumni parties? Truly, Gordon Tech High School. Where does the Gordon Tech alumni go? Where do they go? I don't know, because it's DePaul now. So DePaul can integrate Gordon Tech into the alumni. Truly, into the alumni. So the alumni of Gordon Tech, they keep it, and they transition in remembrance of Gordon Tech, and they have the reunions at the high school. I mean, you can have the reunions at the high school. Again, we're going by here, the Boys and Girls Club, and they can work with the Park District. There's a basketball court and everything in there. But they didn't, but they could. And the people that run that coordinate with the Boys and Girls Club. They can work together. And then you have baseball. And I used to watch the big Latin American soccer leagues. And I have nothing against soccer. But they have it here. And a growing population makes room for, more. So there's segments. And so, again, I used to watch all the Latinos come here and play soccer on the weekends. Yeah, they have big soccer leagues here. But my brother, I played hockey, and I used to skate at Mefedricks, the ice arena here. So there's incredible amounts to do around here. And the neighborhoods are good. I never had crime problems per se in general. So, again, there were no drive-by shootings or shootings at the park. There was never. We didn't even have people overdosing at the parks. There were no overdosing. No, my brother did get it, but in one park there was some gang activity, but it wasn't here at Horner Park or McFredericks, or it might have been at Little Gomps. There was some, but I didn't go much to Little Gomps. But up here there was none, and so this was a great community, a great park, and this is where I met my friend John, and we talked about the pedophile. So we met by a hill over here. There was a hill and there were swings. There's little swings by it. I don't know if it's still there. And it's by the field house. Now, the umpire, there used to be a little side cement field house, a small little field house. This is it. So let me show you. This is where our field house for umpiring. And so, but you can have T-ball and everything. Oh, no, it's not here. No. Is it? Is that it? That's something else. But there used to be a little field house, and that's where I pick up my balls, baseballs, and I pick out my schedule, what games I was umpiring and everything else, and my little clicker, and I wore the black uniform. And I had the big black pad and the face mask. And I think this might have been it. I don't remember correctly. This could have been it. I thought it was smaller, but this could have been it. But you can have all the refs in that come in for the leagues, and they can have the T-ball leagues, and all this stuff here can generate incredible amounts of activity, beating juvenile diabetes and adult diabetes, walking around the park, all the walking leagues. But we're friends of the park. Like I said, for independence and all these things, they're supposed to be doing all the Chicago parks. It's friends of the Chicago parks. And so they have here, I think this might be field hockey, or actually, girls field hockey. Girls field hockey. And you can play girls field hockey. Jenna played girls field hockey. And so you can have girls field hockey. And, I don't understand professional hockey. Why doesn't it promote girls field hockey? They still use, it's a little bit different in the game. But, again, they can promote girls field hockey. They can have lacrosse here. But Major League or the NHL doesn't have to promote hockey per se. They can promote girls field hockey, and you can get girls field hockey and get them skates. Usually they do it with shoes, but it can be in the ice league too, girls field hockey. So again, and this is where we had the draft for Horner's Park, and I was an elite player, and you could only have, I think, 1 or 2 elite players. And so for every team to make it fair. So they rated all the players. Everybody got rated. And when you draft people, it was all based on rating to try to make the parity between the teams, making the league more competitive. Oh, yeah. And so they could only have 1 of me, I think 2 of us. And Jose might have been the other guy. He was a Hispanic pitcher, a lefty. And his father was the coach as well. And only 2, I think you can only have 2 exceptional players. And then you had to fill in with everybody else, but they all had ratings. So you had, like, say, level 10 players. You could only have 2. Then there were 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. And so the teams were spread out. So no team had a bunch of players that were not that good, meaning... So it made it good because everybody could play, because you didn't have a team full of players. So the games weren't 20-0 and so on. The games were highly competitive, truly highly competitive, and that everybody got to play. And so you only had a few players that were below average, below 5. And so it also made no one pick on them. Truly, no one picked on them or made fun of them because they usually played second base and there weren't a lot of left-handers, so they didn't get a lot of balls, and we didn't run double plays, and the shortstop usually was the one covering for stealing. And so, anyways, it made it so at every level you could compete by spreading the players out. No team had too many players that weren't that good. So the league was highly competitive. Everybody got to play, and no one picked on anyone. Truly, on my team, we had kids that weren't that athletic, and we had one kid that was a little bit heavier, and he got in, he played at second, he got the bat and everything else, and it was okay. Because when you pile all the weak links into one or two, then people start, first of all, they get demoralized because they're on teams that get destroyed, and that causes them to be a target of picking on because they're not competing, they're not doing it, and so on. And so no one picked on it. I never had to stand up for anyone at Horner Park in the baseball league. There was no one in the whole league. I never saw one kid get picked on, one kid get teased. My friend Billy Percival, he played, and he was a little bit older than me, I think, but he was highly competitive, and he was a great kid diving for balls. He was a great athlete. He was more of a slender kid, and he was a little bit older. I used to hang out with Joey Markowitz and Billy Percival and that, and Markowitz, he smoked marijuana, and that's why, and he went to a lot of, but his older brother, he used to pitch, and I used to hit, and again, his oldest brother, I used to play a lot of baseball with. He was a great guy. Joey, he smoked marijuana and that, and I used to hang out and watch him, and Billy smoked it some of the time. It did truly deter Billy's career, and it destroyed Joey. So it destroyed him. And you say, it really suppressed his activity, and really it caught up with him. And then somebody got in a fight, and Ricky and that, and they hit him with a baseball bat, and the Farleys. And I had the oldest Farley, I think Butchie, I never had a problem with. But the two younger brothers, I had to kick their butt, both Ricky but I kicked their butt. And so around me, they were in line, David and Ricky. I had to beat them up. I didn't try to I tried not to. I was good friends with them, but it's kind of trying to find their pecking. And I had to kick their butts. Truly. And then once I kicked their butts, there's no more problems. But the oldest brother, Butchie, I never had a problem with Butchie. Butchie and me got along perfectly. He was a good friend to me. I had more problems with Ricky and David, but most with David, who was the youngest. And they, I guess, beat Joey Markowitz with a baseball bat and gave him cognitive damage. Hopefully now with modern technology and that, and just like the other kid who's a friend, Jax, and I worked with him in that, and he got beat with a baseball bat, and he got cognitive damage, and now they can repair all that. So this is where my brother almost died, and this hospital, Kendrick Hospital, they did the right thing. I'll never forget that. They saved my brother. They couldn't save him. They recommended, and I was there with my mother and recommended him be moved to Children's, and they said, we can't save him, and we don't have the technology and capability, and they referred him. Now, it would have been nice if they got a referral fee to incentivize doctors to do the right thing, but they did the right thing, and he moved him, and they said if he stayed here, and I was right there, if your son stays here, he's going to die here. We can only comfort him, but we can't do anything for him. And so he went to Children's, and they found out tuberculosis of the bone, and they were able to save him. Now, there was medication and some other stuff that ended up shrinking his liver, and he died of a staph infection. So the drugs were pretty harsh on the liver, and they should have watched that, but they were trying to save him from the tuberculosis, and they didn't pay attention to the other organs. So they saved him in one way and damaged him in another. So, but they don't do that anymore. You gotta watch things. It's a balancing act. Yeah, you're treating one thing, but you don't want to destroy and cause problems in other areas, because now they get over one thing, but now they're left with another problem. And here's where Wells Park, and this is where I went boxing. This was the boxing league. Carl boxed up here. Now, I went on my own, and I came up here to watch him, and then he was in the Golden Gloves. But again, he could have got me and John involved in boxing. And then he got involved in martial arts at a very young age. I mean, younger. But he could have got us involved. He got involved in Kung Fu. But again, he could have done this. And I'm telling you, not because I hate my brother, but he could have, and my friend Mike Weiser and that, play softball at that park. So I'm just saying, my brother could have engaged, like graduate school. He went to grad school. He never worried about me and John getting a college degree, going to graduate school, or anything. And I'm saying he could have worried about more of that, and he didn't, and he should have. And so you have to do these things. As much as I said one thing, but they didn't worry. Like my sister didn't worry about my advancement and my college degree, but I always worried about her. So in one way, things were good, like I told about protecting from bullies and that, and but in another way, there wasn't enough. And I've always helped John, and John could have done a better job in helping me. So we had dysfunctionality in a way as siblings, not helping each other enough. Truly. And that's called family dynamics. And not enough internal support and worrying. This is why families have fallen apart. Because they don't think about doing these things and supporting. And that's why I talk about, I give you Chris and Kevin. The professional Kevin, successful professional football player and so on. And Kevin had cancer, and Chris was on the same track, but Kevin could have included him more. And I noticed that through my interactions with Chris when he defriended me once, then he friended me back. But he had this little bit of resentment of where his life should have been compared to, and the cancer. He got one more year, but he wasn't the same athlete from the chemotherapy and everything. I think it was chemo. I don't know. Chemo. He beat the cancer, but he was never the same athlete. And so there was and so Kevin could have included him. Even now, Kevin goes to Miami Dolphins reunions and so on, and he can bring Chris with and get him involved in, the other players, meeting the other players, and being around him and being a friend. And him, Chris, I would assume is married. I know Kevin is, and Kevin was married to a white girl, and it seemed like they had a great relationship. Kevin was awesome. I've never had any bad relationship with Kevin ever. And, those guys were good to me. And I had the one incident, but he thought it'd be funny, but I'm not going to go back into this. Not any of them. It was another player who ended up in the pros. But he bumped my scooter and pushed me into the middle of the street. And thank God, as he bumped me and pushed me, and he didn't see my brake light. The scooters have brake lights. My brake light wasn't on. That means I'm pressing the brake. When you take your foot off the brake lights aren't lit. And he thought, he thought it'd be funny, him and the other guy, and I had no problems. And I was friends with him afterwards, but he thought it was funny. And I looked back, and their faces were like ghosts. They were shocked. They thought they just tapped me in the back end, but I didn't have my brakes on, And as they tapped me, they pushed me into the middle of the intersection. Now, as I'm rolling to the middle of the intersection because I didn't grab the brakes right away, a big truck, boom, just flew by, and I entered the middle. There was no cars behind it or anything. So I missed the big truck, and there were no cars behind it, so that it wasn't secondary. They thought I had my brakes on, but I have a tail light, a brake light, and the brake light wasn't on. And he was an older, they had this older, I forget what car. But he didn't think. He thought it would be funny. Funny, And then he would have been up for murder. Truly, manslaughter, but there would have been no NFL or anything else. Truly, his career would have been destroyed. He would have been kicked off the team. It would have been the end of him. And it would have been the end of the other player, too. But they thought it's funny. Like all these people think it's funny hurting me. Not so funny. They're attacking me. And they should be dealt with unbelievably harshly. So, just like he thought it was funny to do that, he almost killed me. And only God saved me. So, and I looked back and I saw their faces, so I know they didn't do it on purpose, but I have a brake light. And it's not so funny to hit somebody in the back end. And it was just a little love tap, but no, unacceptable. So, again, and both of them, since I've seen a black girl, both of them are black guys. So, I could have been killed. So, I'm very cautious about what I think is funny. I told you about how I took the eggs out of the eggs and I put shaving cream, and so I wouldn't hurt them and wouldn't stain them. And I thought of all these things of, somebody came out with Nerfs. So take all those things that would hurt somebody and figure out how to do the joke without hurting them. So figure out how to create Nerfs. I love Nerfs. They have the football. They have the little things you shoot, the darts that don't. They're really squishy, and and Nerfs are great for little kids. You can play, and they don't hurt you at all. Truly. And so, no, yeah, but I think they're bigger. They can't be a choking hazard. But again, I love Nerfs. Somebody came out and said, we don't want all these kids hurting each other. And so they came out. They even came out with a foam rubber bat. So, there's ways to create these things that can't. So think of the jokes like Jimmy Kimmel and everything. If you're really intelligent, you do what Einstein says. You take the very complicated and make it very easy. Now, other people will see it as easy, but he can take things and for the betterment of the country and make jokes that improve the country, that show the country the right path, and use it as a comparison and contrast. Truly. So, jokes are supposed to be ways to handle the truth. No one knows that? Jokes were created to be able to tell somebody something without them getting upset. Jokes were created for people to be able to handle the truth. That's why jokes were created. Go back. The essence of jokes were created to be able to tell somebody the truth without them getting upset. So it made it sweet. It's kind of bittersweet, but it was a way to tell them the truth without hurting their feelings. That's the evolution of jokes. But before, telling the truth without getting yourself killed. Truly, you had to tell the king the truth, and so it was a way to tell the truth without hurting feelings. So why don't we get back to the essence of why these things were created? And so no longer jokes are delivery systems for the truth. And so he should be focusing on moving the country forward and communicating with people through laughter. Expressing, even screenplays and all that tell situations. Les Miserables and all this are in the past, and it's to communicate, like the Bible is to communicate things. So again, getting away from the way we're doing it. So again, I love Jimmy Fallon. He does the thank you cards, and it's awesome. And Stephen Colbert has, and they kind of go about it different ways, but they're stand-ups I can't really take. I like Jimmy better because they do it wrong, and Jimmy Fallon better. Because Colbert and that, it's just nasty. It's not constructive. So why don't they think of a way to deliver truth and be constructive? And it's their point of view. Their point of view, how they think things should be. They're delivering and using the writers to deliver information. He was on The Daily Show. It's supposed to be political satire. It's supposed to be funny. But The Daily Show was created to tell people the truth without getting upset. So John Daly created that show to deliver truth and make people laugh so they didn't get depressed. No depression. John Daly did it correct. He was trying to deliver the truth, but he didn't want people crying and getting sad. And so he found out how to deliver the truth. And Stephen Colbert was on The Daily Show. But again, people move so fast. He was on forever, and then it was like turning from one person to another person to another person. I don't watch The Daily Show anymore. But with John Daly, I watched it, and it was a way to deliver the truth without getting people upset. So you can talk about racism or these acts or about demographics and racial tension and so on. And this was to deliver things without getting people upset, but they got the truth. You knew it was the truth, but it was done in a funny thing. Like I watched Late Night at Harlem. And it was all black crowd, right? And black comedians. And they got up there and they told the truth. So I don't know if anyone's but they tell the truth. Do you know black people do this and so on and so forth? And the black people, because it's the truth, and they'd be like, that's it. And it was funny, but it was put in the thing to make them aware of certain habits. So the comedians they could have done a better job, but they were taking habits and bringing it in a way where people could laugh at themselves. So it was black people laughing about things in their life, hardships in their life, things that were going on, but they made it into a comedy show, and all the black people were laughing, not crying, laughing. And they're like, yeah, that's true. And it's and the way they deliver it, they're like, that's so hilarious. And they could laugh at themselves. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's right. We do that. And so they did this, but it was only on real late night. And it did have a good theme. But the whole thing is they're political activists in a way, making people aware of things about themselves and about things going on in the world. And Yui got kicked out of the Chinese restaurant because he ate too much, truly. And they told him not to come back in that because, he had the buffet and he ate a ton. And they ended up, but he didn't rip on the Chinese people, meaning he didn't go there and protest the restaurant. He put it into his stand-up. So watch. And he talks about getting truly kicked out. And then he talked about how his friends were jealous. Oh, yeah. Louis Armstrong talked about how his friends were jealous because he'd get up in midday or afternoon and then leisurely go to a restaurant and then prepare for his skits. And his friends, he wanted them to know he knew they were jealous. But it was a way for him to communicate to his friends. Louis didn't want to hurt him. They were truly friends. But he's like, hey, guys, don't hate the messenger. Don't hate me for this stuff. You know, my lifestyle is my lifestyle. You chose your professions and you do, so don't be jealous of me for my profession. And he would convey it in jokes, and he'd talk about my friends and I get up for, you can pull up the stand-up. But he wanted to communicate to them, and he wanted to show other people that, hey, some people have this going on, and some people have these lives, and you have this life. And, you know, we each to our own, and we have these things, and don't hate me for who I am and the things that I have in my life. And as I don't do this to you, and Louis was conveying, I don't do this to you. I love you as a friend. I watch out for you and so on. And he does say that in his stand-up. I would hope that you would have reciprocity for me as well. And he would tell it in a joke, and the audience would laugh, but he was communicating about his friends. What he thought they were doing was unbelievably unfair to him. Unbelievably unfair. And now Jeff was talking about a redneck, a white guy, but it didn't have to go away. He just didn't understand the redneck, how to tell a redneck. But again, this is informing people of their habits. And he could have been an activist to improve the community and make people aware of these habits. And then they're in the past, and now it's just a pure joke. They don't do any of the evil anymore, and it's just a pure joke. So I used to laugh, but the whole point is he needed to have action to correct these activities. Rednecks were field hands. They had their head down all day, and the sun would be beaming down, and white people would get burnt necks. So rednecks weren't pieces of trash. They were white poor that were hard-working field hands, and they had the hair, but they had the bandanas, but the neck was exposed, and they would get really red necks. Not on the front side, on the back side. And so they called them rednecks. But they were hard-working white poor. And so all he had to do was use it to tell them of these tendencies, and then the jokes could have went on, and that was in the past. That was then, this is now. It doesn't apply anymore. And then the Asian comedian, she used to tell her jokes. And then the Indian comedian talks about her parents and that, but it's creating awareness of habits and what's good and what's bad, and they can separate them out, truly, and move forward. So I love her, sing. And she's just making awareness, and she can be proactive with changing people in the community and making things better. Truly, doing things to move things better. That's the whole point of jokes. We're being able to communicate about these things that weren't so good and to move things better. So, post it on YouTube.